Welcome to the Chairman's Perspective Podcast.
Welcome to the Chairman's Perspective. I'm your host, Mark Billingsley, Chairman of the Shelby County Board of Commissioners. And trust me, you don't want to miss any episodes of the Chairman's Perspective where we take you behind the scenes of everything in Shelby County, Tennessee. So on to today's show, we have Mrs. Dorcas Young Griffin, Director of the Shelby County Division of Community Services, as well as Sandy Bromley, Crime Victims and Rape Crisis Center's Director. So stick around as Director Griffin and Sandy update us on the latest from her division. We'll be right back here on the Chairman's Perspective, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network.
The Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Inside 901.
Inside 901. I am your host, Lieutenant Anthony Buckner. Here on Inside 901, we will unpack the vision of Shelby County Sheriff Floyd Bonner and the various divisions of the Shelby County Sheriff's Office.
We have a racial profiling policy at the Sheriff's Office. We adhere to it. We expect our officers to adhere to it.
Uniform patrol that provide police services to unincorporated Shelby County.
Inside 901.
KUDZUKIAN! Join the Celebrate Shelby Bicentennial event at Shelby Farms on Sunday, November 24th. Free for everyone.
And welcome back to the Chairman's Perspective. This evening we've got Dorcas Young Griffin with us, who's the Director of Community Services for Shelby County Government. And we're also honored to have Sandy Bromley with us tonight, Crime Victims and Rape Crisis Center Director. Good evening again.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So let's get right into it. I tell you, I've been unbelievably impressed in my time as a Shelby County Commissioner with the amount of work and really important services that fall under community services from the community enhancement and outreach that you do, the Crime Victims and Rape Center, pretrial services, mental health, aging commission, community services. Director Griffin, I honestly don't know how you do it, but you know, every time I compliment you and other commissioners compliment you, you always talk about your team. So tell me how you and your team make this happen. It is a lot of work. And as I remind people all the time, this isn't about a pothole. This isn't about a utility service going off. This is about people in Shelby County.
So thank you for having us tonight. Glad to be here. Going to your question about the team, I think that we have brought in the best of the best in terms of our leadership. You'll see that tonight as we talk to our director of the Crime Victims and Rape Crisis Center. But our entire team is full of people who are committed to other people. They have been trained. They live and breathe for others. And so it comes through in the work that they do each and every day. I get all the accolades because I come before you guys to ask for resolutions to be passed, and sometimes I'm the face of the division, but the heart and soul really is the 250 people that do the work each and every day.
That's a lot of staff, and they interact with literally thousands of citizens.
Thousands of people. People are coming to us each day, not just for services. So maybe there's a crisis that's happening right now, but people are also coming to us just for information. And so there are tens of thousands of people that we reach each and every year.
Wow. Well, Sandy Bromley with the Crime Victims and Rape Crisis Center, you're with us. We're so glad you're here. Pretty serious job that you have. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the Crime Victims and Rape Crisis Center.
Sure. So we are a comprehensive victim service center. We work with all victims of crime in the community, really at any point following a victimization. So it doesn't matter how long it's been since you've been victimized. We want to make sure that we're reaching out to you. We provide crisis intervention. So right immediately following the crime, you may come in for a sexual assault forensic exam, commonly known as a rape kit. That's at my center. Or it may be 10 years later, you're coming in for trauma counseling after you've lost a loved one to a homicide. So it's a wide range of services we provide to all these victims.
Out of the offenses that happen, how many rapes on percentage-wise are actually reported?
Sure. So roughly between a quarter to a third of all rapes are actually reported. So that means so many more are being unreported that we don't even know about. In 2018, there were 1,150 forcible rape offenses, 1,150 just here in Shelby County, which is insane. And so if you think about, that's only a third of what is actually happening in the community. We're talking a lot of sexual violence in our community.
Pretty horrific. Director, what have your experiences been with the Crime Victims and Rape Crisis Center?
So, of course, I'm partial to this group because they're my team. But I will tell you an unbiased opinion. I have family and have friends who have had to receive services through the Crime Victims and Rape Crisis Center. I have one friend whose son was a victim of homicide. And she has, of course, had a long journey to just get to a place where she feels almost back. And one of the places that she's found hope is through the folks at the Crime Victims and Rape Crisis Center. The ability to get support groups, the ability to volunteer and help other people just makes a difference. So I think it's a true gem in our community. And I am hopeful that more people understand the value of the work that they're doing there.
Very good. You're listening to the Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network. Sandy, what's advice that you give to women who may have been victimized and abused? What's the best advice you can give to them?
Sure. So one of the most important things that victims of crime need to hear is that it's not their fault.
Right.
So this was an intentional act that somebody else committed against you. So just that small piece of validation often goes a really, really long way. So hearing that it's not their fault, and then secondly, hearing that it's possible to recover from trauma. That's really important. We're seeing that now with some of our cold cases. So the backlog of sexual assault kits means that we now have cold cases 20, 30 years old, and we're getting those victims to come through our trauma counseling program now. And the healing that we're seeing, like I said, 20 to 30 years later is just remarkable. The fact that they can come in and receive just life-changing services, really just through talk therapy. No, we're not talking medication or anything fancy. So it's really amazing to be able to see that healing.
Are there support groups associated with your organization?
Yes, sir.
With your department?
Yep. So we have free trauma counseling services for, like I said, all victims of crime. And so we have gunshot support groups for gunshot victims. We have support groups specifically for the Latinx community, so people who speak Spanish. We have a special trauma processing group for them. And then we do things like adult survivors of child sex abuse and then other support groups as needed. We're actually about to start a brand new group called the Teen Grief Group. So teens who have witnessed homicide in their community or in their families, they're able to come really just learn from other teens how they're healing and how they're working through their grief.
Director Griffin, I assume all the support that victims receive is free, and how do they get in touch with Sandy and appropriate services?
Absolutely. It is free. And they can give us a call at 222-3950 and get more information about the support groups and some of the other services that are available through the Crime Victims and Rape Crisis Center.
And if they just need help and they want to be confidential, they can call confidentially. Their name won't be shared.
Absolutely.
Information won't be taken unless they want to share that.
Absolutely. The people there are very, very respectful and conscious of people's privacy. We understand the need for confidentiality and for people to feel safe. And so people do not have to feel any kind of way about calling.
Very good. You're listening to the Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
The Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Hey, I'm Williams Brack, co-host of Grind Set. The insight you gain from us and our guests will motivate you to take the leap into entrepreneurship. Make sure to check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast provider.
Grind Set on the KUDZUKIAN Network. KUDZUKIAN!
Join the Celebrate Shelby Bicentennial event at Shelby Farms on Sunday, November 24th. Family-friendly activities, local food trucks, live entertainment with a fireworks finale, free for everyone.
And we're back on the chairman's perspective this evening. We're with Dorcas Young Griffin, Director of Community Services at Shelby County Government, as well as Sandy Bromley, Crime Victims and Rape Crisis Center's Director. We had a great conversation so far on the Crime Victims and Rape Crisis Center, how to get help and support. This is a tough time of year for a lot of the people that you serve in so many different ways, but even the weather the last couple weeks, and it's going to get tougher as time goes on. From everything from the outside elements to utility needs for seniors, our veterans. Right. How does your department and Director of Community Services, how do you interact with all those very serious issues?
So there are a lot of ways. So one of the primary ways is through our utility assistance program. Every year, we receive money from the state to provide utility support for folks who meet certain income requirements. Mm-hmm. That means that you don't have to have a cutoff notice. You don't have to be in crisis at that moment for us to help you with your utility bill. And so we are able to pay up to $650 for a household. And that provides lots of relief for people during these times. The other ways that we partner with other organizations, the city of Memphis actually hosts warming centers for folks who do not have shelter and have nowhere to go when the temperature reaches a certain point. And so we are partnering with them to make sure that folks, as they're coming in for shelter, that they also are aware of other services that will maybe connect them to some permanent shelter, to permanent housing. And do some wraparound case management with those folks there. You mentioned our veterans. Mm-hmm. We have a veteran services officer here, and we actually just opened up a new veteran service office in Millington. And so we're able to get veterans connected to benefits that they may have due to them. And those benefits can help stabilize a veteran's living situation, their financial situation, and just get them back on track as they come back to our community. In addition, we have the Aging Commission of the Mid-South. And so, we love our seniors. My parents are getting a little bit older. They probably will hate to hear me call them seniors, but they're seniors now. And so we know that our seniors are our most valuable resource in our community. And we are able to get them connected to health care. We're able to get them connected to housing. We're able to get them connected to meals, utility assistance, all the things they need to be able to live independently in their own homes. And so, we get calls that run the gamut during this time. It's all year, but during the cold and heat seasons, it really is profound for many of our folks.
If you look at your department and community services, you're on a daily basis from what Sandy Bromley shared with us about the Crime Victims Rape Crisis Center. You're dealing with a lot of vulnerable people.
Absolutely.
Some people who've been victimized in different ways, especially with our seniors. I don't think we talk enough about our senior citizens.
Absolutely.
And how susceptible they are to all types of abuse.
Right.
Right here in our own community. Right now, you're listening to the chairman's perspective on the KUDZUKIAN network. Do you see any inflection on incidents during the seasons? I know sometimes when families get together, literally emotions can rise. Sometimes people get hurt during the holidays. How does that affect your work at the Crime Victims and Rape Crisis Center?
Sure. So actually our highest spikes of crime in this community are during the summer months.
Oh, okay.
But we do also see little spikes here and there right around the holidays, just like what you were talking about, right? Families get together, drinking's involved, conflict is it's pretty much inevitable at that point. And so sometimes people just don't yet know how to handle their conflict. And so they choose violence to handle their conflict. And so we are there to help folks 24/7, 365, particularly with sexual assault forensic exams, but we help folks through a hotline as well. And so we want to make sure we're there for people no matter what happens.
Director Griffin, one of the areas that we have not talked about is pretrial services. It's unbelievable how many different areas that you really oversee. But tell us a little bit about that and how the greater population is affected by your pretrial service efforts.
So pretrial services is our effort as a county to try to divert folks from our jails when possible. There are many cases that come through our criminal justice system every day where people may have committed an offense, but they are no threat to others or themselves. And where we see possibilities of getting those folks dealing with their offenses and letting them deal with their crimes outside of the jail system, we want to do that. Why does that matter to you? Why does that matter to me? Well, it matters to us because it costs over $90 a day to house a person in the jail. When you start looking at keeping people in jail for 10 days, 15 days, then we get up to a year, 2 years, the costs become exorbitant for our community. And so where we can keep people out of jail, we want to do that. And so pretrial, what they work on is identifying those people who are low risk to offend and high risk to come back to court to deal with their cases and try to deal with it outside of the jail. So most everyone, when they are arrested, is given an interview to be diverted from the jail. And so we go through the calculations. That'll take too long. That's a whole other podcast. Sure. But we go through our scoring criteria and figure out which folks to make recommendations to be released. In addition to doing that, the group that does pretrial work, I should give a shout out under the leadership of Lana Greer, who is amazing. They actually handle county probation as well. And they also are handling, overseeing our GPS unit, as well as our day reporting center. And they also help folks get connected to community service in lieu of paying fines when folks have issues with paying the fine. So we are trying to do everything we can to create the least amount of barriers to people being out of jail.
Wow. You're listening to The Chairman's Perspective. This evening, we've got Dorcas Young Griffin, Director of Community Services, with us, as well as Sandy Bromley with the Crime Victims and Rape Crisis Center. You will be back in just a moment.
The Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Join the Celebrate Shelby Bicentennial event at Shelby Farms on Sunday, November 24th. Family-friendly activities, local food trucks, live entertainment with a fireworks finale. Free for everyone.
Jazz, America's own original musical art form. When did it start? Who were and are some of the major players? How do you distinguish what kind of jazz you're listening to? We talk about the great and lesser-known artists, songs and tunes, the instruments, and the social impact jazz has had on world culture since its beginning at the start of the 20th century.
Riffin' on jazz on the KUDZUKIAN Network. KUDZUKIAN!
And we're back on The Chairman's Perspective. This evening, we're with Dorcas Young Griffin, Director of Community Services in Shelby County Government, as well as Sandy Bromley, Crime Victims and Rape Crisis Center's Director. We've talked about a lot of heavy things because it's important work that you do, from the victims of crime and the Rape Crisis Center to, we've talked about, this is a tough time of year with the cold, dealing with utility assistance, all the needs of our seniors, our veterans, the underserved, quite frankly.
Right.
You do life-changing work.
Right.
You do, in my opinion, you both do God's work. What led you into this? And, I know Mom and Dad. Director Griffin's parents are actually pastors.
I did not go into the family business on purpose.
Yeah, but you're sort of doing the family business.
Yeah, but Mama says the joke is on me because the work, public service actually is the work of the people. It is a lot like ministry. And so I think that it really, for me and probably everyone that's in my division, there was a pulling on our hearts and spirits to help other folks. Like, you just got it in you and you can't run from it. I mentioned that we all have passion to do the work, but a lot of us also went to school to do the work. So you got nurses on our team. You have folks who are social workers who are on our team. For me, I got my master's in public administration at the University of Memphis because I just didn't know what I needed to do.
Sure.
But it helped me here to get into public service and not just be here because I had the heart for it, but also to have the education to really be able to understand all of these complex, convoluted concepts of working in government. And so I think it really is a calling. I think it's a calling for me. I think it's a calling for Sandy. I think it's a calling for this whole team and everyone that's here every day.
Well, you're making a huge difference. Director Griffin talks about, about all the issues that you have to address on a daily basis. Sandy, is there a way to prevent some of the things we've talked about tonight?
Sure. So one of the things that we're trying to focus on at the Crime Victims and Rape Crisis Center is really trying to get out ahead of the issue. So we see over 650 victims every single month. Every month, 650 people come to my office for services. And that's just ridiculous. We have got to get out ahead of this. And so one of the things that I've done over the last 2 years since I've been in town is create a violence prevention team and effort and try to go into the schools, teach kids about healthy relationships. It's not something we're taught in high school.
Right.
And yet it's something we need every single day of our lives. Teach kids about consent. And really just trying to get out there and letting folks know that violence is not the answer to solving problems and what are some other options instead. And so that's what we're really trying to put some more effort into and really focus on so that we can hopefully get our numbers to reduce so that we're actually not, in the end, serving less victims because there are less victims in our community.
Director Griffin, is there ever an age where you're too young to understand some of these things? When should we be teaching some of the preventative steps? When should that really happen?
It's as soon as they're born.
Okay.
I think as you hear us talking about early childhood and we're making investments in kids when they're born, like touching kids and giving them love and teaching them appropriate ways to interact with others. Like you start when kids are born. So it's never too early. I think that, we are not just trying to do prevention in the Crime Victims and Rape Crisis Center, but all across our division, we're looking at ways, how can we get people stable where they don't need us?
Right.
The best thing that would ever happen is that we work ourselves out of a job. We got a long way to get there.
That'd be wonderful,
but
wouldn't it?
that would be wonderful. When your heart is really in this work, what you want is to not see people come here. And so every day we're thinking about how to serve the folks that are coming in with the crisis, but also how do we prevent the crisis from ever happening in the first place? And that starts when people are born to when they are old. So across the gamut.
I'm Mark Billingsley, and you're listening to the Chairman's Perspective on the KUDZUKIAN Network. Any other thoughts, Sandy, as we wind the show down on the Crime Victims and Rape Crisis Center?
Sure. Well, I just want to make sure folks know how to reach us.
Absolutely.
So our main line is 901-222-3950. But we also have a 24-hour sexual assault hotline, and that number is 901-222-4350. And like I said, we're available 24/7. So anytime folks just need some more information, maybe they just feel like they need to talk to somebody, we're there to help them.
Very good. Director, any closing thoughts? We've got about 2.5 minutes left.
I just appreciate the opportunity to come and talk about what we're doing in community services. A lot of times you will hear people that maybe don't understand that the government does have a role in some of the work that we're doing. We understand as a county and as an administration that if we don't invest in helping people get through difficult points in their lives and directing people to information, it does impact us all. And so I'm just thankful anytime people give us the pulpit.
Right.
You hear that pastor reference?
Right.
I can't get away from it.
That's the truth.
Anytime we can get the pulpit to talk about the work that's being done, the investments that we currently have and that are needed to do this work, I will always be here to do this. And I do this on behalf of not just myself, not just behalf of my team, but thousands of people in this community who depend on us each and every day.
Really, really good. I'm so thankful for the Community Services Division of County Government. It's truly changing lives. I know you have to deal with a lot of issues on the day-to-day basis that have got to be tremendously upsetting. But also when you talk about ways to prevent some of the issues that we all deal with, it's huge, especially so much of the work that you do as seniors, victims of crimes and rapes, the veteran services, the justice initiatives you're doing. We've got a lot to be grateful for.
Well, and I would say this just in our time wrapping up. So we have kind of talked about heavy stuff and just how upsetting it is and the victimization of people, the trauma that people go through. But each and every day that we see trauma, that we see all of these things that upset us, we also see hope.
Absolutely.
We see hope. We see resilience in people that have been victims of crime that come here and their lives are turned around. We see resilience in people who couldn't pay a light bill last year, but may have a new job this year and are providing for their families and living in stable homes. And so for every day that is kind of depressing to see a situation, I promise you, we get another day where we see hope. And so I think that's what keeps us going in this work is the hope. We see the goodness in people and we see the resilience in people.
Well, it's been a blessing to be with both of you. Hold on 1 minute. We're going to be back, and we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be back with the Chairman's Perspective.
Join the Celebrate Shelby Bicentennial event at Shelby Farms on Sunday, November 24th. Free for everyone.
Today, we hope the information shared with you by Director Dorcas Young Griffin with Community Services can either help you or a loved one. Shelby County, Tennessee is celebrating 200 years of existence, and we hope to leave your children and children's a better place. So as the cold season comes upon us, look out for your neighbor or stranger. Lend a helping hand where you can. We've had a great show today, and we continue to encourage you to listen to the Chairman's Perspective and Commission in Action 2.0 by downloading the KUDZUKIAN app or by visiting your favorite podcast provider. I am Chairman Mark Billingsley, and you've been listening to the Chairman's Perspective, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network. We'll see you next time.
The Chairman's Perspective Podcast. Executive Producer, Shelby County Commission's Chairman, Mark Billingsley. Directed, produced, recorded, and distributed by KUDZUKIAN.